My mom's girlfriend yelled at me for chores I didn't know, so I stood my ground. After years of being treated like a maid, I spoke up. Am I wrong for defending myself against her hypocrisy? I believe this will be a lengthy story. Here is some background. When I was little, around 6 years old, my mother brought home a girl and said she was her friend. I believed her, of course, and we greeted her. For the rest of the day, my sister and I did not see my mother or her friend much. This continued for months until one day the girl simply never left. She was now living with us, and all we knew was her name, nothing else. I was initially happy for my mother because she now had company while my sister and I went to stay with our father for the summer. However, my excitement gradually turned into resentment. She was overwhelming and at times unkind to my sister and me. She taught us how to clean the house, which was fun at first, but then it became daunting. I remember one day, when I was still in daycare, coming home to a house that desperately needed to be cleaned by me and my sister. I am talking about sweeping carpets, wiping down cabinets and tables, and washing dishes piled up in both sinks we had, with the counters covered in sticky substances. Often, while we were still in our uniforms, she would be in the kitchen supervising us, ensuring we did everything properly. I hated it, not because we had to clean, but because I felt like a maid picking up after adults. Several years later, around when I was in 3rd grade, we came home, did our homework, and went outside to play. After washing up and eating dinner, my sister and I, as usual, were burdened with the mess. Dishes, sweeping the carpet, cleaning the stove, and more. We thought we were finished and went to bed since we had school the next morning, only to be awakened by my mother's friend yelling that the dining room floor needed to be swept again, and that we should have cleaned the living room too. Reluctantly, my sister and I got up and grabbed a broom to sweep the carpet. We were half asleep and not doing it correctly, but the task was still being done. Then, out of nowhere, she yelled again that we were too slow and needed to get under the table. My mother stood beside her, allowing her to speak to us like that. I felt angry, but being a child, I couldn't express it, so I crawled under the table, and she continued berating me for going too slowly. When I put the broom down to adjust my pants, she saw me, assumed I was finished, and hit me with a belt. I was bewildered and began to cry while she shouted that we were not doing it correctly and that we would not go to sleep until it was done right. She was striking us as if we were slaves. I was trying to sweep, but all I felt was the sting of the belt on my back. Because of my tears, I could barely see where I was sweeping, and my mother just stood there allowing her to hit us. That day marked the beginning of my intense dislike for her. At that age, I wished to escape it all. I was miserable about how I was being treated and longed to be free from the pain. Fortunately, I called my father to inform him that she had struck us. He yelled at her and my mother for not discussing it with him. That was the first and last instance of her hitting us. Do you recall when I mentioned my mother said this girl was her friend? Well, we were in the car going to Jack in the Box when her friend leaned over and asked, "Hey, babe, what do you want?" In perfect sync, my sister and I looked at each other in confusion since we both thought they were just friends. Then they kissed, which made me uncomfortable, but I still supported my mother, only to feel devastated because she hadn't thought to tell us. We endured a lot of negativity from their relationship, yet we defended our mother, believing they weren't together. Fast forward to a year ago, we had just moved. We had been in our new house for about a week or two when my sister suggested moving the outdoor trash bins around the corner since it had been raining all week and our feet and legs were getting wet from the distance we had to walk. I agreed it was a good idea, asked my mother for permission, and she nodded, indicating she had no objections. That morning, we moved the bins and continued with our day. Later that evening, my mother's girlfriend came in and sat on the couch while I was talking to my mother. She then said, "Oh, I moved those trash cans back to where they were. It was stupid and lazy whoever did that." I bet it was. And she named me. I was bewildered because that remark was unnecessary. My mother jumped in, saying she didn't understand why we had moved them. I looked at her in disbelief, feeling betrayed because I had asked her first, and now she was acting uninformed. Upset, I walked away and told her it was my sister's idea, not mine. That night, I had a significant argument with both my mother and her girlfriend. I ended up being sent away for a week, and upon my return, things felt different. I stopped speaking to her girlfriend because of the incident and the week of separation. While my mother was away on a trip, she instructed me to wash my clothes that night. I gathered my clothes for washing, and once the washer started, her girlfriend came out of her room as if summoned. She loudly questioned, "Why are you using my washing machine?" I took a deep breath, shrugged, and told her to discuss it with my mother, then walked away. She hurled insults at me as I left. When my mother called me afterward, she said, and I quote, "Yeah, she was wrong. I told her I told you to wash. She shouldn't have said that, but you were also wrong for saying what you said." She claimed I was wrong for telling her girlfriend to discuss it with my mother. I felt angry because it seemed like no matter what I did, she always backed her girlfriend, even when I was right. I chose to let it go, dismissing it as whatever. Now, to the part where I need help understanding if I am in the wrong. This took place on a Wednesday after school. I came home, went to bed, and when I woke up around 8 a.m., I went into the kitchen to prepare something for myself. I saw some chili and made a bowl for my meal, then cleaned up after myself. It wasn't my designated day for chores. My sister and I share responsibilities, so I intended to head to my room. However, my mother asked if I could put the chili away. I complied and put the dishes in the sink, informing her that I had completed her request and mentioned that there were still dirty dishes remaining. She gave me a thumbs up, so I returned to my room to finish my homework, choose my clothes, and read my Bible. As I was preparing for bed, her girlfriend suddenly came banging on my door. She asked why I hadn't done the dishes, and I replied respectfully, "Well, it's not my day, it's tomorrow." She retorted, "Well, you ate, didn't you?" This baffled me, and before I could process my thoughts, I responded, "But you ate too, didn't you?" She paused for a moment before stating, "Well, are you going to let your sister do the dishes when she just got off work?" I was about to respond, but she slammed my door. I intended to say, "I thought you were going to do it," since we had a house rule which she established that whoever cooks must also clean. Apparently, that rule did not apply to her. While I acknowledge I probably should not have responded back, I do not think I was wrong. Every time I cook for everyone, whether it is my designated day or not, I handle the kitchen cleanup in addition to my chore. Meanwhile, others seem to receive leniency. Now, I am burdened with extra tasks that delay my bedtime to around 11 or midnight, even though I need to go to bed by 10:30. So am I in the wrong for speaking back to my mother's girlfriend? Apologies if this story is disjointed. This is my first time sharing it. Story 2. I realized my mum's beauty through her pain. She thought she was ugly, and her mum never loved her. It broke my heart so hard. My mother holds a very low opinion of herself. I have been aware since childhood of her insecurities regarding her self-image. She dislikes her facial features and body, and she has expressed this to me throughout my entire life. Although she has never called me unattractive, she consistently remarks that I am beautiful and that I am fortunate not to resemble her. I am uncertain if I actually look like her, but I am confident that I do not take after my father, as many people are astonished to find out we are related. My father would joke that he might have thought I wasn't his child if I didn't share the same smile as his sister. Throughout my life, I have often been told that I share my father's personality traits. I do not believe my father has ever made comments to my mother that would reinforce her feelings of inadequacy regarding her looks. I recall that whenever he made unkind remarks about my appearance during my childhood, my mother would become very upset with him, as she was protective of me in those situations. To clarify, my father is not a bad person. He simply tends to speak without consideration, and his way of bonding with me as a child often included playful teasing, some of which crossed the line. I was quite forthright as a child, and I had no qualms about responding sharply to my father's comments. I am unsure how much he should have encouraged this behavior, but then again, it is what it is. My mother has always been extremely protective of me. I remember when I was in the 3rd grade, I mentioned to her that some boy had been unkind to me, and she confronted him outside the school. While she didn't yell at him, her words certainly intimidated him when she told him to leave me alone. My mother loves me deeply, and I have never doubted that. Therefore, it pains me greatly when she expresses how unattractive she believes she is. Moreover, she is simply mistaken because she is an undeniably beautiful woman, and she has always been so. I wish I had inherited more of her genetics instead of those from my father's side, since, while no one believes I look like him, I undoubtedly inherited my pale complexion from him. My mother and I have not always shared a close relationship. From my primary school years until I was about 16, Our relationship was quite tumultuous and challenging, largely due to our inability to understand one another. I remember when she learned that I was attracted to girls. She took it particularly hard. During that time, we argued frequently and both said and did many things to inflict pain on each other. To be honest, I think I traumatized her significantly during my teenage years, as she no longer makes the comments she once did about bisexual individuals being the cause of the AIDS epidemic and that we are all disgusting and greedy. This change is appreciated. I still do not believe she truly understands me, and she disapproves of many of my choices, and we have numerous disagreements. I am not at all surprised that my mother struggled so much with accepting my sexuality growing up. My grandfather even shared a story at a family gathering about how he once assaulted a gay man when he was younger. He told it as a joke, and while it elicited laughter from some, it left many others horrified. Why were we allowing someone to openly admit to such behavior without facing any repercussions? The point I want to make is that my mother has made significant progress away from her parents' attitudes toward open-mindedness, although she still grapples with many issues. I am not a pushover about it. I have consistently communicated to her over the years that while she may not agree with my lifestyle, if she wants me to remain in hers, she must accept it. While my mother certainly does not comprehend me, the one thing I have never questioned is her love for me. Throughout my life, my mother has always been there for me. She has said many hurtful things, but whenever she mentioned my appearance or related matters, she did so with good intentions. Although she has upset me at times, she has also persistently expressed how beautiful I am, how intelligent I am, and that her love for me is unwavering, regardless of circumstances. I didn't always believe those affirmations, but I have always felt confident that she genuinely believed them. My mother's parents did not share that perspective. She has confided in me several times about the emotional impact her parents' treatment had on her, even in the present. She often tells me how fortunate I am not to have them in my life, and I concur, as the stories she has shared about them are truly disturbing. I recall one occasion when I was about 14, and she had been drinking. She revealed to me that she had always known her mother did not love her, and that nothing she did would ever earn her mother's love, stating she never wanted me to feel that way. That was the moment it dawned on me just how deeply affected my mother still was by her parents' actions. That was also the moment I started to have issues with my grandmother. I do not care how old she is. She made my mother feel unloved during her upbringing. My mother wants me to put forth more effort in my relationship with my grandparents, but honestly, after hearing about all they put her through, the best I can do is be courteous when I see them. My grandfather sometimes tries to make mean-spirited jokes at my expense. I am aware he likely intends them to be light-hearted, but I genuinely dislike him as a person. However, since it is ostensibly all in good fun, I respond in kind, which often leaves him upset. I try to avoid going too far in my responses, as I do not want to distress my mother. I honestly do not care about upsetting my grandfather. My mother has never liked it when I stand up to him. My father has always supported me, asserting that if my grandfather insults either me or my mother first, it is perfectly acceptable for me to reply. Additionally, I believe my mother finds some of my responses amusing, as I have caught her stifling laughter on several occasions. I have always known that he was quite cruel to my mother, and that she was fearful of him during her childhood, which is why I never liked him, even as a young child. However, as I grew older and learned the extent of his cruelty, the sole reason I care that he is still alive is because I recognize it would hurt my mother if he were gone. Since I moved out a year ago, I have not seen my parents as frequently due to the difficulty of visiting, and while I love them dearly, I desperately need my own space. Nevertheless, I make a point to call them at least once a week and attend family gatherings when possible, as it brings her joy, and I genuinely enjoy spending time with some of my relatives. The catalyst for my writing this post was seeing a photograph of my mother on Facebook from her younger days. I simply could not fathom how anyone could ever make her feel unattractive, and it broke my heart to realize she endured so much at such a young age. I wish she could perceive herself the way I do, as I have always considered her beautiful. Even now, as she ages and believes she is unattractive due to wrinkles and feels the need for cosmetic procedures, I do not think she requires any of it. I believe she carries her age gracefully, and her wrinkles are charming. they do not diminish her beauty in any way. They are part of her, and I think that as I grow older and eventually develop them too, I will not be upset, as it will simply mean I resemble her more, which can never be a negative thing. Story 3. I, 25F, intentionally let go of my greatest love, 25M, 6 years ago. Now I want us to try again, but am I too late? 6 years ago, I developed feelings for one of my close friends. Although I do not want to presume that he feels the same way, there were moments when I sensed that he might. I will always remember the time my father figure passed away. He was the first person who came to my mind. He was my support, providing me with the strength to carry on. I believe I was also someone he turned to when he faced challenges. We even had our own special place at the university where we would meet to discuss our problems or simply enjoy each other's company in silence. I treasure every moment and will hold them close to my heart. During that time, our friends frequently teased us, and we did not mind at all, though we never confirmed anything. Despite the absence of a confession, I have always believed deep down that he likes me, or at least cares for me more than he does for others. However, it seems we remained just friends out of mutual fear of confronting our feelings. In my situation, I thought I had time to confess my feelings properly after college, as I wanted to prioritize my studies first. Based on his personality, I assume he did not want to commit until he had established himself independently, without relying on his parents. He is the serious type who does not use his parents' money unless it is absolutely necessary, asserting that it is not his money. Both of us were studying the same field, and I believed we could achieve our dreams together. Regrettably, I had to stop attending college due to a financial crisis in my family. We were not wealthy, but we were comfortable, and I never anticipated that we would face financial difficulties. However, a series of poor business decisions and misplaced trust led us to lose our business and adapt to a life of debt. I became increasingly insecure about my situation and fell into a spiral of negative thoughts. I often thought about him and envisioned a future together, but I did not want to burden him with my struggles. I must have overthought things significantly because I even considered how his parents might react if we entered a relationship. While I know his parents are kind people, I felt unworthy of him and believed they would not approve of me, someone who had not completed her college education and was struggling with debt. Despite my anxieties, he remained unchanged. He reached out regularly to check on me. Little did he know that I was becoming consumed by my negative thoughts. While he was being kind, I could only think about how unworthy I felt of his attentions. Then an incident occurred. I had online friends on X, Twitter at the time, who shared an admiration for the same idol, and we had a group direct message. One day, a new group of people joined our chat, and among them was a guy who sparked my sympathy. He reminded me of my former self before I met my wonderful friends. He was often misunderstood in the group, and I would occasionally message him privately to let him know when he had accidentally offended someone. He would apologize to the group, and everything would be fine. He also seemed to show interest in me, but I regarded him merely as a friend, a reflection of my past self, so I tried to dismiss any romantic notions. However, on April Fool's Day, he pulled a horrible prank. He pretended that he was going to end his life while I was desperately clutching my phone, begging him to stop. He questioned why I was intervening, and all I could express was that I cared too much and wanted to prevent him from harming himself. It wasn't until later, when the situation calmed down, that I realized the significance of the date he was pranking me and the rest of our friends in the group. Naturally, he never admitted to it being a prank, and perhaps his friends felt unable to intervene due to how deeply the topic of death affected me. He later feigned ignorance about our conversations, asking why there were messages in his Twitter inbox that he couldn't recall. It was distressing, and I was overwhelmed by a flood of emotions. Within a 24-hour period, I transitioned from panicking about the prank to feeling triggered, to crying, to relief that he was all right, to anger at the deception, and finally to numbness. I felt genuinely hurt and used, struggling to think clearly. I only wanted to escape from all my emotions, leading to self-destructive behavior. When the friend I had feelings for messaged me, asking about my day as usual, I lied. I told him I was heartbroken over the guy in my group chat and that I was at a loss for how to proceed. From his replies, I sensed that he felt confused and then hurt, yet he still expressed a desire for my happiness. In my misguided perspective that day, I thought I was letting him go for his own sake. He deserves someone better than a broken person like me. I believed that in time, he would find someone who would make him happy and who truly deserved his love. Since then, we have not maintained frequent contact. I regret that decision, but I convinced myself that loving him from a distance was sufficient. He would occasionally message me on my birthday, and I would do the same for him. We never addressed our feelings. It was as if they never existed. However, it became clear from our conversations following that incident that something about our relationship had shifted. He seemed distant, though never so far that I couldn't reach out to him. Years passed, and we exchanged messages during special occasions. Each year, I naively asked the universe for a sign about whether I should give up on him or confess my feelings, but every year I lost my courage. I feared how he might react. I worried that taking any action beyond rekindling our friendship would hurt him. I was also concerned that I might be too late. Sometimes, I felt that all my misfortunes were a form of punishment for hurting him, but still, my foolish heart could not release my feelings. I know in my heart that I will never love anyone as deeply as I love him. Last year, I was taken aback when he messaged me, seeking my help regarding his career. It felt like we were gradually returning to our previous dynamic before I falsely shared my feelings. We managed to maintain regular communication despite our busy schedules. We were even supposed to meet up, but he had to cancel at the last minute due to another meeting. On New Year's, he was the first to greet me at precisely midnight, just like he used to do on special occasions. I hoped this was a step toward moving forward and that I might soon explain everything to him. However, everything changed once more when he asked if I could purchase his product and meet to finalize the details. I replied the following day, January 2, as I did not want his career to begin with a rejection this year. Although I now have a job, I still lack savings, and after calculating my average monthly expenses, I realized that I could not afford his product, which required a monthly payment. I apologized, explaining that my bills were numerous. Almost 2 months have passed, and he has not responded to my last message, leaving me unable to muster the courage to reach out again. I am unsure if I am merely overthinking things and he is just busy, but I am also consumed by the thought that maybe I am too late. Perhaps it would be better for both of us if we stopped communicating altogether. I wonder if anyone has faced a similar situation, and any advice would be much appreciated. I apologize for the lengthy message. Story 4. After my wife and I argued over my weekend chores, I locked myself in the bathroom to distress. Then she banged on the door. Oh boy. Okay, so I have never posted on here before, but I'm trying to determine if I am the issue in this situation. My wife, 26 years old, and I, 28 years old, have recently been having arguments. In fact, we have had only 2 significant disputes over the past week. The last time we had a disagreement was approximately 2 to 3 months ago, and it wasn't that serious. To provide some context, we have a son together who is 1.5 years old, and she has an 8-year-old daughter from a prior relationship. I am the primary financial provider, and she contributes what she can, which is typically less than 10% of our expenses. This arrangement allows her to stay at home to help care for our son and to transport our daughter to and from school and various events. We are usually content with this arrangement and communicate openly about it. She typically manages most of the household responsibilities, but I work from home part-time and have a somewhat flexible schedule. I make an effort to assist when possible, and I try to fulfill her requests whenever she asks me to do something. Although we frequently discuss this, it occasionally results in complications. Currently, our son has been unwell for the past 5 to 6 days, experiencing vomiting, diarrhea, needing constant attention, and staying up late at night because he was too tired from being sick and slept during the day. My wife requested that I pick up our daughter from school and take her to her after-school activity. She finishes school at 3:15 p.m., and I am not working from home today. Additionally, I have a coworker visiting from the opposite side of the country, as we are trying to train him and get him acclimated this week. I had informed her about this schedule the week before last and again this week. I also have a meeting scheduled from 2:00 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. She offered me the option of either returning home to care for our son, which is a 30-minute drive from the meeting location, or picking up our daughter, which is a 10-minute drive away. I chose to pick up our daughter to assist, understanding how difficult the past week has been for our son. Usually, she has been the one to handle this as these meetings always occur on this day and at this time. We had discussions about the arrangements hours prior to the meeting. I hurried to complete my tasks and prepared for the meeting in advance, letting my team know that I would need to leave early to pick up our daughter. While driving, I spoke with my wife and mentioned that my air conditioning might be failing since it was very hot in my vehicle. After collecting my daughter and taking her to her after-school activity, I started heading home. I arrived home an hour earlier than I had been able to do all week. I entered the house, greeted my wife and son, chatted for a bit, kissed her, and mentioned that I would take a quick shower. She made no objections, and I had brought it up multiple times prior to this moment. I had gone to the gym earlier that day, and since my air conditioning was not working properly, I was very sweaty. I went into the bathroom, undressed, and stepped into the tub. I have bad knees, so soaking in warmth usually helps alleviate the pain. I accidentally locked the door behind me, and after I got into the tub, my wife knocked on the door and said, "Are you just going to come home and lock yourself in the bathroom?" She then walked away in a manner that was more aggressive than usual. She claimed that she expressed this calmly, but I do not necessarily agree with that assessment. I called her on the phone to ask her what that was about. She responded with, "I have been home all day with a sick child, and you're going to lock yourself in the bathroom." At this point, she was definitely being aggressive. Frustrated, I told her to shut up and not speak to me like that. I know I should not have said what I did, but I was upset by her confrontation after I had preemptively informed her multiple times about my plans. After my bath, which lasted about 5 to 10 minutes, I got dressed and found her in the kitchen, where I asked for an apology. She did not apologize, but instead claimed that I do nothing around the house, saying that I just sit on the couch and never contribute. This is not true. I make every effort to meet her requests, and this constant dismissal of my efforts is really frustrating. There has been a buildup of tension because I try to help her when I return home, but she typically tells me to just watch our son. She has expressed what would assist her the most, and I make sure to accomplish those tasks. On a few occasions while working from home, I forgot to complete certain duties because I became engrossed in my work, resulting in a rushed situation. She does not let any of those instances slide. One time, I neglected to take out the trash to the curb, knowing how upset she would be, so I loaded the bags into my truck and took them myself. Despite this effort, she remained very upset that I did not take the trash directly to the curb. The end result was the same, so I do not understand why it mattered so much. Returning to her statement that I do nothing, I pointed out that I rearranged my entire schedule to accommodate her needs. She responded by saying that being a parent is not helping her, that's just a parental duty. At that point, I was very upset. In a knee-jerk reaction, I said that it must be incredibly difficult to stay at home when she does not have to pay anything towards it. I make a point not to bring this up in arguments. I mentioned it once or twice 1 or 2 years ago, but I have avoided bringing it up since we agreed on this issue. I couldn't contain myself because she kept insisting that I contribute nothing, belittling my involvement in our relationship. Emotions were running high on both sides. I then said that if she didn't want to hear criticism, she shouldn't dish it out to me. She responded by accusing me of constantly attacking her character and downplaying her contributions during arguments. Although we don't argue frequently, I guess the intensity of our disagreements could be described as violent, not physically violent at all. She asserted that she never does anything of the sort to me and defended her behavior, but when I pointed out that I was simply reacting to how she approached me, she claimed she takes no responsibility for it. I know we were both exhausted, and our emotions were elevated, causing everything to escalate dramatically. I have a feeling she is going to view this post. There are some aspects of the conversation that I did not capture here since I cannot recall every detail. She asked me to post this here. I spent the remainder of the night with my son, putting him to bed while feeling upset with my wife and knowing she was upset with me. She didn't even stay in the room with us. Instead, she began to criticize the dog I brought into our relationship due to some trash outside. She dislikes my dog and has insisted that he not be allowed in the house, openly stating that she will never like him. I told her to be quiet once again when she said that, informing her that she cannot speak negatively to him if she will not treat him kindly. I felt as though she was directing her anger from our conflict toward my dog to provoke a reaction from me. Did I go too far with my responses, making me the insensitive one?